So my name is Micah J with Porsche 4K, and today we have...
My name's Jimmy.
Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy, so it was a good pleasure talking with you previously. You were telling me about your GT4 here. Would you mind going into some of the specifications that you've done to it, aftermarket, as well as the design inspiration?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So it's a 2016 GT4. It's the first year of the GT4. It's a 6-speed, 3.8 liter. That's how they come stock. Then it has a Cobb tune. Gives it a little more oomph. Has a Kropovich aftermarket exhaust, titanium exhaust. JRZ suspension, so it's got a full race suspension, a BBI roll bar. It's got full harness belt. It's really set up for the track. It's a street car that you can drive on the street, but more like a race car. So it's something in between. Pretty fun.
Yeah, awesome. And I love the Lighting McQueen wrap. Where did that come from? What was the inspiration behind that?
So I did a wrap on my previous Cayman, and I got a lot of attention, and I like that. So when I got this car, I'm like, I want to do a race car livery since I mainly drive it on a racetrack. And I'm like, well, I was thinking about doing like a classic Porsche livery from one of their race teams. And then I thought, well, what's the coolest race car there is? Well, it's Lighting McQueen. So I made it up on my Sony PlayStation on Gran Turismo. I did a mock-up of it, and I really liked how it looked. So I took it to the wrap shop, and I said I wanted to look screen accurate like Lighting McQueen. And I was going to do a red wrap, but I was like, I saw that Disney made a silver Lighting McQueen toy. And my car was GT Silver, so I made it up in silver, and I'm like, I love the way it looked. So it's more of a homage to Lighting McQueen, where he's red, this is silver, but it's screen accurate to Cars 3, and it's super fun. I carry little Hot Wheels cars in the glove box and give them to the kids. All little Lighting McQueen cars. Gets a lot of attention. I love it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, I know you were giving me some insight on the capabilities. We were comparing the GT4 to maybe a 911 in the canyons and racing.
Yeah.
You tend to tell me that you have a lot of racing experience, or like to do that with this vehicle specifically. Tell me about an experience that was most memorable to you.
Most memorable. I think probably the most memorable is the first time I got on a racetrack. Not in this car, but where I went out with an instructor and went on a racetrack, and you have someone sitting in the passenger seat teaching you how to go fast on a racetrack and be safe. And I immediately was hooked, and I'm like, I want to do this. And then it just took me down a rabbit hole where I got a different car, started modifying it. So it's these cars were built from a racing heritage. So everybody who drives a 911, I encourage you, take it to a racetrack, or if you got a Cayman, take it out to a racetrack and see what it can do. With an instructor, you'll have a blast, and then maybe you'll end up like me, where you become a track junkie and go as often as your budget allows it.
Absolutely. So with that, you seem to be a very, very passionate about the Porsche brand. What is something that draws your attention to Porsche?
That's a great question. I think I grew up in the 80s, and there was the Lamborghini Countach that you got a poster of, or you wanted a 911. That was like the cool car. And it was in movies in the 80s, and of course, Risky Business, that was a Porsche 928, but I grew up on 80s movies, and every time I saw those cars, where I grew up, you never saw a Porsche. And so I was like, someday I want to have one of those, and I think it is my third one.
Okay. What's the other vehicles that you had? What was your first one?
So I had a 87 911 Targa, was my first Porsche. And then I got a Cayman S, and now I have the GT4. I've had like 35 cars in my lifetime. I'm in my 50s, so this is by far the coolest one I've ever had.
That's great. That's great. So you've had a few experiences with Porsche vehicles, starting from previous generations to more modern day. What is one of the pieces of technology that stood out to you that you like the most?
Ooh. So this one's a 6-speed manual. And that's all they made it in 2016, and it's all my budget would allow. But my previous Porsche was a PDK, the paddle shifting automatic transmission that comes like in the GT3 over here. And they make it in the current GT4s, and I really love how quick it shifts. The automatic, this is super fun to drive. It's very engaging, and it auto blips, meaning it rev matches. So when you downshift, it rev matches. It's really fun to drive a stick, but the PDK technology from Porsche and their automatic transmissions is phenomenal.
Indeed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And one last question for you here. I would definitely appreciate the time and the
Yeah.
insight you've given. What is one piece of advice you would give somebody trying to get their first Porsche one day?
Trying to buy their first Porsche? That's
To get
tough.
to that point.
That's tough because for me, I never made a lot of money, and I was trying to. I'll tell you my personal story and how I ended up getting one. I was going to open a bicycle retail store, and I had been saving my money, and was going to sell bicycles for a living. And the building I was going to lease got leased out from under me, and all of a sudden my business plan fell through. And I had all this money I saved up, and I was all depressed. So I went out and bought a Porsche instead with money that I was saving to start a business. Probably not a good business decision. I ended up never owning a bicycle store, but I've always been a Porsche enthusiast. And, you can get a inexpensive Porsche and become part of like Porsche Club of America, go out to events. And when I say inexpensive, you can get an older Porsche 944 or something that's the brand and it's just cool. And then you just work your way up as your budget allows. These guys over here I'm talking to, they've owned a bunch of Porsches, and the same thing. They moved up. I know one of them bought his first 911 just like 2 years ago, and now he's got a new GT3. So it's you find your way. Sadly, it's a lot of old men. These guys are young over here. I'm 55, but it took a long time for me to be able to afford something like this. It's sad because I think you should own these in your youth. You should buy one.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely appreciate the insight. It's Micah J with Porsche 4K, and we're signing out.
All right, nice to meet you.
Yes, sir.